Welcome to Disrupted Science, the occasional conversation between the authors of the upcoming book, How the Internet Disrupted Science. I'm Joy Moore here with my co-author, Ken Anderson, and we're recording this on Wednesday, September 10th, 2025. Hey, Kent.
Hey, Joy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. You're just back from a whirlwind trip to Chicago.
No, whirlwind is the right term. It was only a couple days, but it was so great to get out in the world and see some people who I haven't seen in a long time and meet a lot of people that I've been following and interested in and haven't gotten to meet them in real life. But also to be in a big city for a couple of days before the National Guard came in.
Yeah,
Just
right. Chicago, man.
for the record, the weather was lovely. I was up early, out walking around. I was out late, even took the L up to see some friends in an art opening. I was not murdered. I felt no sense of disease. And so I hope Chicago stays Chicago.
That's right.
Yeah.
They got the
So what?
best. They got good pizza. They've got good hot dogs. They've got sports teams. Yeah, not their best uh, decade, but we'll give them hope for that. But
Anyway, there's definitely hope for Chicago, and there's hope for a lot of people. The presentations that I got to see and a lot of the posters, it was really cool going to the poster sessions and talking to some of the people who were presenting the amount of research that's been going on in a very academic, rigorous way around some of the things that we're talking about that kind of bubble up into the publishing sphere. There's a lot of really thoughtful people who are concerned about it and are looking into it at that level. So
that's great. That's great. We need all
yeah.
that we can get.
So let's get into today's topic. Um,
Let's do.
One of the taglines for our book, and we've been on a book update, we've been working on a lot of the promo um, material because we're starting to get into that phase of the book publication process. But one of the taglines that we started with, and it still holds true, is that the global system of managing scientific claims has been hacked by tech's bad ideas, big money, and hidden agendas, and is being flooded by sketchy papers pushed by people with the most questionable of intentions.
Amen.
And so we wrote about how we can trace things that have converged to get us to where we are right now with the state of science and public health, and through the research that we've been doing on following specific actors and who funds them. Um, and
Money,
anybody
right?
who's, yeah,
You follow the money, right?
you follow the money. You follow
Yeah.
the people and the money,
Yep.
which unfortunately tells us a lot more than the actual science if you're reading the papers. If you look around the periphery of who the people are and how they're getting paid for, it might tell you a little bit more than what the actual content is. But anyway, anyone who's read The Geyser or listened to us talk about anything on this podcast probably knows that we do not support biomedical preprints in principle or in practice. And
Nope.
that's nope. And that's not because we're jerks who don't want good scientists to get early access to good science from their peers. We're not against that at all. But the platforming of preprints has turned out to be more often than not better for bad scientists and their agendas than for the good scientists that they're purported to serve. And we know this because nobody's really looking at who's behind them, why they're actually being used, what they're being used for, and so forth. So these platforms in the name of open science have gone up. They've been They've been funded. And so there's more and more open and easy ways for people to put biomedical preprints out into the world based on some assumptions. And people seem to have been not thinking about what that actually means or looking into what they're doing now. So, on that note, after that rambling intro, Kent, what the Zuck are we talking about today?
Right, so let's dive in. So I'm going to start a little bit of a narrative because I've been tracking this for a while, and I think this is a story that is worth telling. And I want to start with a quote from Kara Swisher in her Burn book, which is the quote she starts out with, and it gets back to following the money. And her quote is, "It turns out it was capitalism all along." And earlier this week, I discovered the editor of Jack is also an officer of openRxiv. And openRxiv is the new home to bioRxiv and medRxiv, two major biomedical preprint servers.
And let me just pause for a moment because you
Yeah.
say Jack like everybody knows what Jack
Oh,
is.
right. Sorry.
So let's talk about what is Jack.
Jack is the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, and it's the top specialty journal in the field. And the editor in question is Harlan Krumholtz, who I think was appointed editor-in-chief either this year or last year. And he just published in that journal an essay about gold standard science and how they adhere to that, and it's nothing new to them, but in that he failed to disclose, even though he used the word transparency or transparent 12 times, that he is an officer of openRxiv. Huh?
I said, who's counting?
Who's counting? Me. I love to count things. So, because it leaves an impression, right? So it was a 1,200 word essay, and he used that word 12 times. So 1% of his words were about transparency, and he forgot to disclose that he's an officer of openRxiv. Now, you may think that that's harmless because openRxiv is funded by CZI, which is the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. But there's a lot more to his whole story, which if you follow the Geyser, you know about it, and you can find stuff there. But we're going to talk about what CZI is and what it isn't, and how it relates to the science spaces. In 2017, CZI made two big moves into the space. One, it acquired an AI company that had access to thousands of scientific articles and was predicated on the idea that it would make new discoveries and find new cures. And this company was called, wait for it, Meta. So that's where they got the brand that they now use. So it was acquired by Facebook in 2017. And that's why they could flip to this brand so quickly, because they already owned the trademark. And they got it from a brother and sister team, Sam and Amy Molyneux, two nice Canadian smarties, who started up this meta.org and then sold it to Facebook in 2017. I think they moved to California to tend to it. But in 2021, there was nothing really going on with it, and I wrote about this and then got some flack for it because they're like, well, you just don't have any faith in AI. And I don't see anything going on there. And then in 2022, it was shuttered.
But Sam and Amy
ahead.
were really, their company was based on AI founded in science for the pursuit of scientific inquiry. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they wanted to do text mining and discover new, between and among papers, that maybe humans would miss connections. They would find those connections through machine learning and just the sheer abundance of information.
Which is still the promise that's being promoted today. Yep. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the inference engines are supposed to be doing that as well. So, it was shuttered. The brand was reassigned as an umbrella brand for all of the assets that Zuckerberg had assembled, Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, and all of those things. And Amy quietly took credit for having been instrumental in Facebook Inc.'s transformation into Meta platforms, and went on her merry way, and I think is doing consulting at this point. And whatever text mining tech came over with Meta was ingested into CZI Facebook or the new Meta. It's unclear, but there was a little bit of an acqui-hire there, I think. And that same year, 2017, Cold Spring Harbor Labs preprint initiative bioRxiv received its initial round of funding from CZI as well. And I was there the day that John Inglis learned of this funding, and he had been distressed that Cold Spring Harbor Labs was going to shut down bioRxiv because they were tired of funding this little project of his.
Mm-hmm.
And he was overjoyed that they got funding. He was basically jumping up and down and telling all of us of this news.
Yeah, it's the bailout of all bailouts of coming from a inexhaustible amount of funding from Silicon Valley. What could be better than that?
Right. And the statements that went up from Corey Bargman, who was the chief science officer at the time for Facebook, or Meta Facebook then, and Mark Zuckerberg were posted on Facebook. And in addition to funding, Facebook loaned some engineers to bioRxiv to help them develop their platform solution. And, and what is kind of a theme here is that both sides of the Facebook and the media and the technology thing were present then as well. Facebook was a major home to anti-science conspiracy theories and personality that was amplifying anti-vaccine, anti-GMO. Remember when GMO was a thing?
You know what? It's back.
Is it? Oh no.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Everything at once, not anyhow.
And
pseudoscience information. So yeah.
Well, yeah, because it's cyclical,
Yeah,
it can't be proven or disproven. So it's
right.
It never
you got to go
back
to the store and get another conspiracy if you've worn the one you have out, I guess. So anyhow, so all of these things were happening. There were all sorts of problems with preprints around COVID. They started conspiracy theories that we still live with today, like cardiomyopathy and vaccination and ivermectin and all these things. And so in 2021, I surveyed the readers of the Geyser and asked them, would bioRxiv and medRxiv be better off to cut ties with CZI and become independently funded? Because Cold Spring Harbor Labs has enough money to pay for it. They've got, I think, $800 to $900 million in the bank. And at that point, 62% said yes, they would be better to cut ties with CZI. So librarians, editors, and technologists, interestingly, were most solidly in favor of this. And then in 2025, after more things had transpired, including some of the things I mentioned, I asked the readers again, and it was a larger pool of readers, should those preprint servers cut ties with CZI? And this was after openRxiv had announced their acquisition of these preprint servers. And I'll tell you why I use the term acquisition in a minute. And this time, nearly 80% indicated they thought they should disassociate themselves from CZI. So if you're asking the peers of the people in scientific publishing whether this alignment between these preprint servers and CZI is a good idea, the peers are saying no, it's not. But
yeah, and I can draw some parallels to the reason why most medical journals have a prohibition on taking any funding from the tobacco industry, right? BMJ famously did a really great graphic a few months ago connecting different funders to medical papers through the parent companies that are actually the 5 biggest tobacco companies on the planet. Right. And so if you're going to, so that's a model of don't take money from people who do harm. That's long been adhered to in scientific publishing in principle.
Yeah.
And so it's by extension, it applies to people who make software that hurts people.
Yeah, you would think that would be the case, and it would be pretty much a slam dunk answer. But again, I think there was more than a whiff of desperation around the funding of this back in the day, and I think there's also kind of the techno-utopian belief that this is all going to accrue to the positive. But one of the things that people will say is, why are you down on CZI? It's a philanthropy. These people are giving their money away, and they aren't looking
Right.
for any upside from this.
It's just a pure handout to all the people who need it, right?
No, it's not.
What's the problem? It's not. All right.
So I was kind of surprised when I dug into this, because it turns out that Chan Zuckerberg Initiative is a privately held for-profit limited liability corporation, and it's not a philanthropy, even though I think one of the articles we'll talk about later just this summer referred to it as such. And it was established on December 1st, 2015, upon their birth of their first child, and congratulations to them still. It's lovely to have kids. But they made a pledge to transfer 99% of their shares of Facebook to CZI to make the world a better place for their children, and Max was the recipient of a public letter announcing CZI and the couple's intention to pay it forward. Max is their son, and he must be, what is he now? He's 10 years old. So 2 weeks later, CZI LLC was formally established in Delaware. And its registered agent is a firm that specializes in legal services like serving subpoenas and setting up corporations.
Wait, can you
I know, it's a
rewind
lot.
wait. So they started a philanthropy to raise money for science.
They made a pledge.
They made a pledge,
right?
And then to save the world, but they specialize in legal services.
Well, so they made a pledge.
Subpoenas?
Then they set up a LLC, and the registered agent is basically a legal services entity. So they deal with setting. They keep track of filing dates and make sure that paperwork gets done, and it's basically a clerical services at the legal level.
Okay. So this is just the paperwork people. Got it.
Just the paperwork people, but it's it all ties together as far as how this is set up, right? So it's not like Priscilla Chan is worrying over whether at the kitchen table in November whether she's going to be able to get the LLC paperwork in. They've
she's got people to do that. Yeah,
she's got people to do that, and the entity is set up to an address that goes to an organization called Iconic. It's ICONIQ Capital, which manages Chan Zuckerberg Initiative and also two other Zuckerberg LLCs, Chan Zuckerberg Holdings 2 and Chan Zuckerberg Holdings 3. And so this is basically they transferred stock from Facebook to their own holding company, and they called it Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. But it is a for-profit LLC. And what they have done over the time period is they've established a few 501c3 organizations, one of the big ones being the Chan Zuckerberg BioHub, which was established in 2016 with $600 million in initial funding. It received no more funding until 2023 when another $1.2 billion showed up, but its run rate is about $100 million a year, so that all adds up, right? So it doesn't look like it. It looks like they're putting stock in there, letting the stock ride, and then they're, hoping that it accrues to, stretches out. So they must have made about, I don't know, 10% back on that 600 million to make it to 7 years. So,
but
who knows?
If you look at their website, the biohubs are front and center, and so they've got a few of them in different cities, and they are partnering with some very prestigious scientists around different disciplines for these privately funded labs,
right.
Where they have a certain number of topics that they are focused on that relate to open science, AI, and a lot of kind of pre-biotech discovery. And so their big claim to fame is that they are investing in the basic research that others aren't. So let's just put a little pin in that one for a minute. Okay.
Yes, right. Yeah. What they say and what they do are often interesting to compare. So they have a lot. Chan Zuckerberg BioHub has a lot of real estate investments. They own a lot of land. And this is a well-known approach for people with a lot of money, is they put in real estate and see what happens.
In Chicago, and in San Francisco and New York, I think is the other one. Yeah.
Yep, and they pay their employees well. There's 8 employees pulling down more than 500K a year, and the president earns more than 900K a year, but for whatever that's worth. But what's really interesting is they have and like you said, an entire page of what they call initiatives. And if you look back over through the Wayback Machine and read the press clippings and all of that, they actually deal these out and make deals around these and sell them for money and that money goes into this LLC.
Right. But so help me understand this because all their initiatives are open. Everything is open. We fund open science. We have open databases.
Yeah, that's just a word
We're
though,
doing yeah. So how do they make money on open?
because the technology is proprietary and it's built and they are selling, what they what they think is, it's sunk costs and they have to sell the software, the code. And it may be open, but there are pieces of it that aren't, right? So one of the big things about the the big companies is they either have proprietary data or they have proprietary software, and they'll say that one of them is open and while they keep the other one closed. And whatever the choice is, that's what they end up selling. Or they have a customer base that they're selling and they already have revenue streams around that, and that's what they're selling. So there's something of value. And so, one initiative was purchased in 2023, another in 2021, another in 2020, another and two in 2019. And the last one that they actually, the press covered it and said it was sold for $750 million worth of cash and stock. So this is an LLC that is making more money for the
Yeah.
family.
So one of their key investments and commitments has been to what they're calling essential open source software, and that there are platforms in the open source software for science space that they endorse, and they're funding to make sure that anybody can use it for whatever they want to do. So that's how they're spreading good around the world, is they're making sure that the ones that they deem that are essential are funded enough for other people to contribute. What it is, it's another platform play, just like Facebook. It's no different. They're just providing the infrastructure to get people to use it to contribute the content that they're going to turn around and monetize either the content or the infrastructure. Am I getting that
And it's
right?
the same with the preprint servers, right? I mean, that
Yeah.
they
So,
invested money to platform scientific papers that weren't peer reviewed because that's the cheapest form of scientific paper to platform. And explicit in that was an agreement that they would be able to use that content to learn from an AI person to use in their AI, that they could that content was essentially theirs, if it was posted to those preprint servers, and they could use it to train their AI systems or for whatever other purposes in their technology stack. So
and
that's what
if
they bought.
right. And if they were using this great content to train AI systems to be smarter as the only thing they were doing, that's one thing. That's a whole discussion.
Right.
But what we've seen with the actual content that's being published um, on these preprint servers is not towards the type of science that we think should be ingested in AI. There's a lot more pseudoscience and willy-nilly things and things that are never corrected, even though they go on to
Right.
be published somewhere else. So
Right.
there's a lot of junk on the back end of this primary source of let's get good stuff for AI.
Yeah, and the servers are actually stalling out a bit too because people know they've lost their novelty to some extent, and also authors have learned to use them to post author accepted manuscripts, so they aren't really preprints anymore. They're basically becoming, and this is something publishers should worry about. They're basically becoming very close to the version of record, which confounds all of those studies where they say preprints aren't that different from the published paper. Well, that's because the authors have wised up and they've said, well, I'm not posting this until I know it's accepted, and then I'm posting the accepted version just to get 3 weeks of a jump start on social media to let people start citing me. And so, there's a whole bunch going on. That's what I mentioned earlier, where people are, or you mentioned, I think, that people aren't really watching what's going on these platforms. And if you really take a hard look at them, there's a lot more dynamism and a lot of smart people figuring out how to use the platforms for their own purposes, including, the Maha people, including authors who are well-intentioned but just want to be more performative with their work, and so on and so forth. But just to kind of round out how much of an acquisition CZI made of bioRxiv and medRxiv. So they started in March of 2025. A new what they call an organizational home was their euphemism for these two Cold Spring Harbor Lab preprint servers, and it was called openRxiv. Its full name is actually openRxiv Corp, or Corporation. And Scott Frazier, who's the VP of Science Grant Programs at CZI and has been since 2024, was named the board chair. And so he's basically a CZI LLC employee running this nonprofit. And, that basically is an organizational chart. This would be a subsidiary. And if you compare the filings of CZI LLC and openRxiv Corp, they have the same people, the same law firm, the same handlers, all of that. So
Yeah, all the agents and the agent authorized employees are the same.
yeah, they sent it to the same team and said, file this one now, please.
Mhm.
So and then one of the co-founders of medRxiv, as I found out this week, is an officer of openRxiv that he Corp, and he didn't disclose that. He's actually listed as the chief financial officer in California filings, but on the website he's listed as board treasurer. So this is the kind of again, two sides of there's kind of a euphemism and then there's the actual fact of the matter. But it's
So,
yeah, go ahead.
So just listening and reading what you put together, it kind of brings me to two different places. One is the idea that philanthropic or free hosting of preprints is not what you think it is, that they're all
Right.
connected somewhere, right? And then second, that when we bring it back to what's going on in the news today, in the Vinay Prasad asking for a new study to look at mRNA vaccines under RFK,
Mhm.
and where that is coming from, that connects preprints to Harlan, and it
Krumholtz,
is
right, the editor of
and
the
and
Journal
it,
of the American College of Cardiology.
right, and the connective tissue is funding coming from Zuckerberg.
Yeah, it's a really interesting nest of interests, right? So you have this platform propped up by a technology company that is looking to profit either directly or indirectly from platforming scientific drafts,
Mm-hmm.
essentially, draft papers. You have an editor who has been involved in this for a long time and has had issues with disclosing and um, his involvement in these studies, which are now being used by Maha people to justify a pretty radical proposal around vaccine injury syndrome and things like that. And then you have all the people who just support open science kind of not looking at this skeptically, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a mess because the last thing is what permissions the first two.
Right. It is the well-intentioned ideology that the more we make open, the more that is funded from the source so that anybody can benefit from it is going to better our ability to accelerate science, to make connections that we couldn't make before under, different rubrics. And it's going to, the more we put into the system, the better it's going to get.
It's the whole more information is better. And again, as I think we've talked about before, everybody knows commonsensically that's just not true. The other thing is that if you look across the major preprint servers and you understand that CZI LLC is also a for-profit entity at its heart, all of the majors except Archive are owned and run by large for-profit entities. So preprints.org is MDPI, SSRN is Elsevier, Research Square is Springer Nature, Bio and medRxiv are CZI LLC. So all this free information is up there for some purpose that is,
Not what their stated primary intent is.
right. I mean, for the publishers, I think their intent is they want early access to those authors so they can, it's a marketing funnel essentially.
And it's market share capture, right? I mean, Elsevier and Springer Nature want to have enough, in their hopper to offset each other. And if you're already in our platform, then it's easier to get into our other platform.
And authors have picked up on this, and this gets back to that people aren't really watching what's going on. I've multiple times I've traced it where authors are posting on all three or all four, and then they don't care,
and
they
then
go to whoever's the best deal.
Don't forget about Faculty of 1,000 and Taylor and Francis. I mean, that's the other big player, and they got all that Gates money.
Yeah, true. And then PLOS is also, very cozy with bioRxiv and medRxiv and Gates, and I mean, everybody's playing in this sort of space. But I think the idea that platforming preprints, biomedical preprints, is a harmless philanthropic thing to do. It's obviously become a very commercial play for some people and for different reasons. And I think it's important to understand that the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative is not a philanthropy in the traditional sense. And that's, that to me, when I kind of trace that down, I'm like, oh, okay, I see now what they're doing. This is, once again, as you would predict with Mark Zuckerberg. And I'm not sure that you came across an article where, there's some tension, I guess, emerging around these things. But, Zuckerberg's really all about the money.
And he's all about the money. And so there was a really good Vanity Fair piece by Eugenia Peretz last month about what's going on in Chan Zuckerberg from the inside out since Zuck, became Trumpy, and how the people that have been working for them for years feel about that. And it's not surprising. They're not going to do anything that's going to contradict the bigger mission of Facebook. And so what they're doing in science looks good, feels good for a little while, but they're not going to take a position against the powers that be. They're going to make them continue on the path that they are already on with Facebook. And so that's the sad truth. I mean, it's science washing, right? And the reason that's a word, it means they got dirty stuff over here and they're trying to make it look better over here. Will there be some good science that comes out of it? Will their cell lines, the new initiative that they're investing in on CRISPR, will that result in some good breakthroughs? I certainly hope so. But they're doing that at the cost of being on the wrong side of legislators and the democratic process that put Trump into office and allowed him to slash the public funding for science. And so what they're doing in this little make ourselves feel better space pales in comparison to the damage that they've done on the broader scale.
Yeah, and I think the fact that CZI is not a philanthropy makes it that conflict that it's absolute throughout the entire set of initiatives because they want to make money that way too, and that's a problem. So, if you want to hear as far as what you're mentioning with Zuckerberg kind of being obsequious to the Trump administration. If you want to hear a great assessment of that, listen to the most recent or this Tuesday's episode of the Pivot podcast with Karen Scott, and you will hear the word "fillate"
Oh,
used
gross.
very colorfully and multiple times by both hosts. Um, and it makes me laugh because that is pretty much what seemed to be going on there. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's we're not going to get the strength and science from technology companies that are run by people who are essentially running those companies to make a lot of money. Um,
And
and
there,
even Bill Gates, he may have been at that dinner with Trump to help save USAID. That's the best reading of that I've heard, and I hope it's true. But the younger set, more Silicon Valley set, I don't see a leader emerging out of that group that's going to take a stand.
yeah. Well, I mean, the Trojan horse is the platform as being the free gift with purchase. And I think one thing we have all learned is that it's not worth it. And scientists can exchange information. You can trade papers with whomever you want.
There's
And
a thing called email.
well, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
and the more the platforms are put out there, the more they take on a life of their own. And we've learned that time and time again from all of the other platforms that have been in play over the years. And so,
Well, this
um,
also brings to mind how we've been complicit in fleshing out those platforms, right? So I mean, the preprints get a DOI.
yeah.
Why? Why are
Well,
they treated
because
like
they're
permanent additions to the scientific record?
it's scale. Once you get to scale, then you need to organize. You need to identify, you need
Hmm.
to you need to triage, you need to be able to segment, you need to be able to do a lot of
Aversion,
things. Once you
right?
do things at scale, then you're going to add all these other things to it. And that's
Yep.
what this industry is obsessed with. We've got more identifiers, we've got more scale, we've got more things. But we're creating these homes to attract things that don't need to be together. Now that they are together, then we're treating it like something that is intellectually and scientifically important. And we're applying all of our identifiers and our smartest thinkers to figure out what to do with all this stuff.
Right. Yep. Well put. Well put. So that's a story that I wanted to just kind of put together and put out there this week. It was inspired by a little bit of more problematic things coming out of the biomedical preprint space. Lack of disclosure, lack of quote unquote transparency, and the FDA once again glomming on to things that and again back to the two preprints that Krumholtz was involved with. Those have Maha people on them and people who use the same book publisher as RFK Jr., who have, a lot of the same ties to Bhattacharya and to the Great Barrington Declaration and all the to the lawsuit that went to the Supreme Court. There's a whole messy, messy history around who's involved in those preprints. And this is, again, why scale is an issue because it brings also speed and a flood, and if you don't have somebody taking the time to go through and untangle all of these things, it's easy to get fooled. And that's what the jobs of editors and reviewers and professionals in the scientific space are supposed to be doing. And these preprint servers kick them out of their jobs and say, no, that's okay. We'll just take it at face value and let everybody do what they want to do. And you get these problems then after the fact, and it's a little bit too late then. So,
Yep. And
and nobody's accountable.
they never go away and nobody's accountable.
Yeah. The other thing that I'll just say, one last gripe about these preprint servers is you never know who screened them or what the screening criteria were. Or, they talk about transparency and openness and all of these things. What are your screening criteria? Who screened this?
Well, they're not.
When was it received? When was it accepted? When, all of these little details that tell you a story about a manuscript, and they just elide those because open is pure and doesn't need to have those nagging little, details like accountable dates and a record
Well,
of
yeah, because
transactions and
it's
handling.
no, because it's GitHub. It's post your software, and somebody's going to see if you got bugs in it, if they care to look, and if they
Yep.
don't, then good luck to you. I mean,
Yep.
it's just a totally different model. I mean, the submission review and all those dates have nothing to do with it.
Right.
It's put it
But
up
even
there.
GitHub has dates. I mean, anyhow, so that's the story this week. We've got some really great things lined up, and but right now let's move to discoveries of the week.
Yes, let's.
All right, you're up first, Joy. You've got one that I don't know anything about.
So this is related to my trip to Chicago. One morning I went out to take a walk, bright and early because I was on East Coast time too, to get my steps in and go along the lake before sitting in sessions. And as I walked out of the hotel, so the Swiss Hotel is right on the water. It's like on the lake and then close
It's
to
a
Navy
beautiful
Pier.
spot.
Yeah. And there were two people who were like running up, and they had these nets and buckets, and they looked very concerned. And I was like, "Whoa, what's going on?" Um, and I said to one of them, "What are you catching?" And he said, "Migrant birds."
Oh, really?
Because, yes, because Chicago is in the migratory pattern for a lot of birds, and especially when it was windy, like it was the other day, right along the water, the birds that are trying to fly get caught up in the wind, and then they get slammed into the buildings, and then they fall down. And so they need people to pick them up and rescue them and take them to the Field Museum or other places. Um, and this guy was like, "Yeah, it's a huge problem. This is our busy time because it's, a lot of wind and the birds are moving. And it's a great, I looked it up, of course. It's a great citizen science. Clearly it's, led by professional scientists, but anybody in the Chicago area who wants to get involved, you can go to the Chicago Bird Collision Monitors website, and maybe you can volunteer to go out in the morning and help pick up some birds who got, you know, taken on the wind away
My
from where they
goodness.
need to go.
My goodness. Well, good for Chicago and good for those people for doing that. So yeah, it's amazing what when you again when you look closely at things and people who care are doing interesting things to help everybody. So my discovery of the week has to do with I learned today one of your favorite people, Nate Bargatze.
Mm-hmm.
So he's fantastic, and what a style. That guy's delivery is just funny from the moment the spotlight hits him. But he's hosting the Emmys, I guess, this weekend or next week, next Monday, I don't know. But he's one of the things that he was told when he was assigned the hosting was that the recipients would have 45 seconds to give their acceptance speeches. And if he could figure out a way to make sure they adhered to that, that would be helpful. Give them. I think they were thinking like, give them a hand signal or say something before, to kind of constrain them. But he's a quiet genius, so he came up with something where he's personally donating $100,000 to the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. And that will go to them. But for each second over 45 that a speaker goes, he's going to take $1,000 away from his donation. And he's going to make all the
Oh,
speakers know that that's the case. But for each second under, he's going to increase his donation by $1,000. So it's up to the speakers how much Nate is going to give at the end of the night, which is a fantastic way to align incentives, right?
see, that is such a good idea, that I think we should steal. Everybody who doesn't publish a preprint should get extra funding to publish in a good journal.
Agree, agree, agree. The thing that I'm thinking though is these, some of these people who might win awards are fairly well off. And where this could backfire is if they go, oh, I'll give $100,000 for 100 more seconds to just
Exactly. And that's just what you talked to us about for half an hour. That's what Zuckerberg and Priscilla did. They give
exactly.
money because
Right.
they
We're so
can.
rich that we don't care. We'll just spend it on whatever we want and we'll platform everything. We'll platform the world because that's how we made our money. Rinse and repeat, guys. Have an imagination. But
Well, I think Nate's setting a good precedent, and I hope he gives more money to the children.
yeah, it's a great charity. And, we need more of that and good for him. And it's a genius idea. So congratulations, Nate. You did it again. And he's still the funniest guy out there, I swear. But anyhow, so that's it for this week's a short episode. We've got some really great interviews coming up. We're excited for those. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks to our friends at Provoke the Truth for the music. And as always, let us know what you think. We're at disruptedscience@gmail.com. And do we have a silly sign off for the week?
Well, I have two terrible ones.
Ooh,
Um,
please.
Song related,
Uh,
because I always think so. I thought about Freebird with the Chicago Birds, and they
yeah,
should fly free birds. But
yeah.
I had to come back to Tina Turner's "What's Zuck Got to Do with It?" A
Tina,
lot
we
more
miss
than we
you.
need to know.
Yeah, we miss you. It's funny because I show Tina Turner performances to some of the School of Rock kids, and they're just like they can't believe that somebody's that cool. So, Tina, we miss you, and thanks for everything you gave us, and we will see you next week.